Peggle. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ferret 64 with me, your host, Yemmy the Ferret. Ferret 64 is, of course, your one-stop shop for video game news, first impressions, reviews, coming soon, and so much more. We have a nice, healthy slate of things to talk about today, including what I've been playing. We got a couple new things to talk about here. Also, we got some news to go over. And the coming soon section has some nice things in there as well. So stick around because you won't want to miss it. Or you can always just use the timestamps in the description below or on the YouTube version of the video to click around and see what you like or want to listen to. Anyway, let's get started with what have I been playing this past week? First thing to talk about today is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which was the big marquee, big words, big marquee release of the week. Even though there were other things sprinkled in there, which some I bought, some I didn't. I thought that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was like the big one from this week. And of course, we also had the early release of Civilization 7, which I won't be playing until next week. So, you know, bear with me here. Oh, I'm so sorry I did not buy a $100 version of the game. But I will be playing that next week. I'm pretty interested in it, mostly because I'm a Civilization fan. Obviously, there's other games that probably are going to do it better nowadays, but ever since Civ 5, God, dip my fingers into them, whether it be Beyond Earth, 6, or whatever. But yes, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is the sequel to Kingdom Come Deliverance, if you didn't know. This came out on, what was it, like Thursday last week? Or was it Tuesday? Does it really matter? No. If you haven't played the first game, it's pretty much like, hey, let's take those mechanics from the first game. We'll make it not as tedious to relearn the things that you already know from that game, and add some new stuff into the second game while also keeping the story going from the first one. So if you don't know, the first game you play as Henry. His family is, his family is killed by the Cumans, and that kind of starts his journey. He starts out as like a dumb kid. He's like a teenager as the game starts, and essentially he was supposed to be a blacksmith, but with his father being killed and his mother killed and everyone's killed, he rides off to the nearest castle and tells them that this invading force is coming their way. And it starts off on a very high note, but Kingdom Come Deliverance, it runs into the trouble of, or the problem of, becoming a bit tedious with everything you need to do and all the stuff you need to keep up on. And there are games that can do that right. I think that it does become easier to manage your various nagging things in the first game. But it's still it's a lot to keep track of. Your sleep deprivation, your thirst, your hunger, your staminas, and your health and whatever. And it's a big world to explore. There's a lot to do. There's obviously you go through all your training of becoming a sword master, and you eventually meet up with another a noble, and you become his I forget what they're called, steward, something like that. You go off on an adventure with them. You find a dog named Mutt. You run around with him, and a lot of what happens in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 directly trails off from that. But instead of it being you know how in God of War, the God of War games, you start off with all your abilities, and something happens. You fall into the river of Styx. You blah blah blah. Whatever happens, right? In this game, kind of the same thing, but I feel like it's a bit more realistic because you get ambushed, and they run you into these cliffs, and then you fall off the cliff, and you obviously get very badly wounded. You have a head injury. You get patched up. You start doing busy work for the person who helped you, and you realize like, oh, my sword fighting is not as good anymore because yeah, I've been knocked out or what, you have head trauma. So instead of restarting you from square one, like you can't read, you can't sword fight at all, you can't shoot a bow at all, blah blah blah. They do keep a lot of those basics intact for you to just kind of build off of. So you start off with like your basic combat skills with a sword or whatever, and you can go meet someone in the world who will teach you more advanced techniques like comboing, etc., etc. They've also enhanced the combat a bit. Maybe enhanced isn't the right word, but dumbed it down a bit. In the first game, it was very difficult to get a hold of. I know there's a lot of people who swear by it. I get that. But for me personally, it was something that was just it was just this big learning curve that really didn't need to be in the game, right? And in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it is much easier to kind of start learning the basics of the fighting pretty much from square one. They teach you like the basics of like fenting and blocking, etc., etc. And then once you lose all your stuff, you kind of have to build your repertoire back and get the good gear again. But you still have those basics of combat under your belt, and then you just need to learn advanced combat mechanics and stuff like that. Obviously, it is still very difficult to take down a regular enemy in the game, from a wolf to a bandit to an armed knight. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh man, this is like very treacherous to just take on a pack of wolves and maybe one bandit. I cannot tell you how many times during the first couple hours of my time playing the game, 3 to 4 hours of the game, where I would be walking along on a path to an objective, and I would come across like a bandit who had just killed someone and is taking their money. And sure, you can hide and let them pass, but of course, it's very early in the game. You need the money, you need the equipment, you need the food, you need everything to keep you going. So you do want to try and take on that bandit. And like I said, I can't tell you how many times I lost to just a single bandit with like an axe in his hand. And of course, the game doesn't save regularly. It saves after you do major objectives, and it also saves after when you sleep. But there's a caveat. It only saves after you sleep if you are in your own bed, or a bed that's assigned to you. So if you just sleep in someone else's bed, or maybe you kill someone, you sleep in their bed, it won't save. Which is a bit annoying. I mean, I'm glad that they put a saving mechanic in this game at all, because for the rest of the game, you're just kind of like on the edge of your seat, like, am I going to be attacked by some bandit and die and be pushed back 10 minutes? You never know what's going to happen. There was one point where I was stuck going back and forth between the same two objectives because I kept dying between those two objectives. And there was a couple things I had to do in the town that I kept having to redo, talk to the same guy, do all the dialogue, get all the side missions again, and then walk all that way just to run into a group of bandits and die again, or just to, just die for whatever reason. Have to have a restart. And very early on, they teach you the recipe for making what's called a saving schnapps, or whatever you want to call it. And essentially what that is you drink it, and it saves the game no matter what. It just saves the game right where you are. Obviously, that takes time and effort to get the resources to not only start the process of making it, but also you need to find an alchemy table. You need to learn the recipe and do the alchemy stuff. You also need to make sure you do it all right. And then after all that, you can have one saving schnapps. Okay? It's a very long and tedious process, but at least you don't need to relearn alchemy all over again like in the first game. In the first game, you had to learn alchemy, you had to learn how to do it all. And in this game, they kind of he already knows the basics. Henry is the main character's name. He already knows the basics, so he just needs a little bit of a refresher, which is kind of how the game goes. It gives you some story dialogue, and then they are like, hey, if you want the full story, press this option, or if you want like a quick version, press this option, and you can choose which one you want. You can have the long explanation of what happened, or you can have the short explanation. Same thing happens for some combat mechanics, where it's like, oh, I can choose to just be like, yeah, I'm done after a couple of training sessions. Yeah, I mean, the game is still tedious. It's still frustrating at times, especially when you die and you have to restart 5 minutes back or 10 minutes back, however long it took you to get to the spot where you're at. It does suck when that happens. And I can already tell you after roughly about 6 or 7 hours of the game, it does start to become more clear what you need to do. It becomes way more clear how to manage your various ailments. It becomes much more clear just how to do some basic tasks like pulling out a torch. I could not for the life of me remember how to pull out a torch. I saw the tutorial messages once. I did it once, and I couldn't remember. And if it wasn't just holding the down button on the D-pad, I could not remember how to do that. And if you're walking around at night and you don't have a torch out, and you're in like a village or something like that, they will automatically arrest you because that's against the law or whatever they call it back then. There's a lot of systems to learn, much like your Red Deads, much like your Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, much like any other game that has a lot going on in like this RPG world. There are a lot of systems to learn. There's a lot of rules unwritten rules to learn as well. But as you go through the game, you get more confident in these interactions and these encounters. You learn how to sword fight better. You learn how to, you learn what is actually good to have on your character and what you can try to drop off. You learn to eat the food that is spoiling before it spoils fully, so that you can keep a fresh stock in your bag. You learn that, like, yeah, sure, it's not a good idea to go into a house and just sleep in someone's bed, because they will send the security force around there to arrest you, and they put you into the stocks and they take all your shit. So you don't want to do that stuff, obviously. So you learn very early on, like, what's acceptable in the game, what's not really that acceptable. And you also learn, like, yeah, maybe I should do a couple of, like, side stuff, get my money flowing, get some experience under my belt for these various different things to level up, and then go for the more main stuff. Like the main thing about the game at the beginning is you need to access this wedding that a high-ranking official is going to be at, so you can deliver a message to him. So that's like the first main thing that they want you to do, is like find out how to get into the wedding, do the tasks there's several different ways you can do that. So you do the tasks to get in there, and then of course the game starts going from there. And there's plenty of other things to do. You have to find your dog at the beginning of the game because he gets lost after the ambush, and you find him. And I will say, if you are struggling with this game, by golly, get Mutt. He is a lifesaver sometimes. You can level him up to attack enemies. He can search out food for you, and he can hunt on his own. It's all these different things that really help. Just the basics, right? Distracting an enemy while you're fighting someone else. Grabbing some, hunting for himself, so you don't have to constantly be like, okay, here's some meat for you. He can go and get something on his own and come back. It is a early game thing that I feel like most people aren't going to do right away, because it is like the objectives are farther away on the map. But it is something that I would suggest, if you're struggling early on in the game, to do early on. That way you can have the help of Mutt. I didn't do that, which was one of the reasons why I probably struggled so much early in the game, because he wasn't there to kind of help out when I was struggling. But I can tell you very confidently that Mutt is the way to go for one of the first things you want to do in the game. Obviously, you can do plenty of things without him. Like I've been doing the whole game so far without a horse. And I know there's a lot of people who might scold me for that, but yeah, I haven't ridden a horse almost the entire game, except for when the story needs it. Like when I had to steal back a horse from some bandits for someone, and at the beginning of the game, you're riding a horse automatically. So those are really the only times that I've ridden a horse and actually wanted to ride a horse, because the horse controls are kind of finicky, much like the first game. It's not terrible, but it's one of those things that you just got to get used to. And after playing Red Dead and other games with horses in them recently, it's just one of those things where it's hard to relearn the mechanics for this one. Even though they're not terribly difficult, it's still like I would rather just have this be a bit more basic. And that's kind of the story for Kingdom Come Deliverance, where it's like, yeah, I like the idea that you got here. I like how in depth this goes. But sometimes you just wish that it was a bit more basic. Like the saving function, I wish I could just pause the game and save anywhere I wanted to. But no, it only saves at certain points or when you use that drink that I talked about. That's one of the things that I really would like to have been dumbed down. But there's other things where it's like the combat is very unique in the game, because it doesn't. It kind of incorporates that like For Honor. If you remember For Honor, the like rock paper scissors fighting game, third person fighting game from back in the day. I think it was like 2017 that came out. It kind of incorporates that where you use the various like placement of your weapon to get the weak points, or like you attack from the left because they're holding their weapon on the right, or their shields on the right, so you attack from the left or above. And then you can also combo into that stuff. Like you can do an overhead attack, then a right swing, then a left swing, which will do a good amount of damage on their stomach. The problem is that you feel like that should be like a finishing move, right? But no, 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 no. Your weapons aren't that good yet. Or even if you do get better weapons, they're very like the enemies in this game are very chunky. And I guess it makes sense because they're wearing armor, they're wearing chainmail, they're wearing padding, they're wearing helmets and stuff like that. So obviously, it's going to be a bit more difficult to take down the average individual. Where I don't really see eye to eye with the game is how much health the wolves have. I feel like sometimes I'm smacking a wolf for like 6, 7, 8 swings, and I just feel like they should be taken down at that point. But other than that, I feel like the realism in the game does lend itself to the overall experience. It's still a fun experience for the most part when you are working through the various tasks that they give you. You're trying to practice your techniques so you get better at them, like lock picking, obviously sword fighting, speech stuff. Like obviously there's a bunch of different ways to talk to people. There's persuasion, and there's brute force and stuff like that. All these things that you can level up, like the subcategories on the various upgrade skill trees. So, and you can only get experience for those things by doing them. So there's actually these training areas for a lot of things where you can just kind of like you can like pickpocket a character who was allowing you to do it over and over and over again, just kind of earn experience, which makes it become a bit easier for you as you go on. Same thing with like choking someone out. Like there's even a stat for that, and it's obviously a bit of a crazy thing to just choke someone out is a bit involved. So yeah, it's a very interesting game. I am liking it more than the first one right now. I think the map size is perfect for this game right now. I think that it runs fairly well. I haven't run into any glitches or crashes. The game has a good performance to it. I've had some lighting issues with the PS5 version of the game where the lights like will get bright and then fade every once in a while. I don't know why that happens. It's probably a graphical issue. Other than that, though, like the game has been running perfectly fine. I've been having just looking at the sights of the game has been great. The character models are very detailed. You can see like the pores on their faces, and they have very realistic facial expressions. They also talk in a way that you would expect people from that age, the medieval era, to talk. And there's a lot of funny dialogue in the game, and there's also a lot of like, I don't know, just kind of bizarre dialogue as well. The writing is very good in the game. I found myself chuckling along to a sequence, or just kind of being like, okay, yeah, let's go. When a character's talking, there are some times where your persuasion will fail, and like what the other person says is pretty brutal. There's also times when your thing will fail and they just straight up attack you too. So. It's obviously a bit of like a give and take there. Yeah, I mean, I've been through so much of the game so far, but it feels like I really haven't scratched the surface yet. It feels like it's going to be one of those games that's it seems a bit shorter than what it actually is, because the map size is a decent size. Don't get me wrong. It does feel a bit small right now, and I feel like after you do the wedding, it will expand the map out a bit. That's what I'm expecting to happen, of course, but I will see once I get there. I am planning on playing through this game because it's been a interesting journey so far, and once again, I'll be a broken record for the 8th millionth time. Plan on playing longer games this year. I want to try and not force myself to, but I want to try and get through some longer games. I want to try and get this game done before Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii comes out, because I'm very interested in that game. Obviously, that game's is much different from Kingdom Come Deliverance, and I feel like even if I did play them at the same time, it wouldn't be too bad. But I would like to finish at least one more longer game before that one comes out, because the Yakuza games are long by nature, or just by how they develop them. Other than that, the game has great music. It's got a it's got a good atmosphere to it. It takes a minute. It takes like a couple hours to really get going. But this is one of those games where you got to just kind of stick it out for a little bit, get through that opening sequence, get through, lose all your stuff, and then start from square one in the stockades. You're at your lowest point, and then you hightail it out of there and start doing stuff and getting back all your stuff. So it does take a little bit to get into it. But once you do get into it, after the first couple hours, I think that it really starts to show what it really can do, and what it can do is pretty good. And I'm interested to see what else the game will have to offer as I continue playing it. I've been playing it pretty regularly. I'll eat and watch some YouTube or do whatever, and then I'll come back to the game. If someone wants to play Call of Duty, I'll play some Call of Duty, of course. But I'm playing Kingdom Come, before and maybe a little bit after, depending on when people start to go to bed and stuff like that. So it's just one of those things where I'm trying to keep playing it, because it's easy to forget things from this game. It's very easy to be like, how do I pull out my torch, right? It's very easy to forget, like, oh yeah, I need to draw my weapon, so I need to press left on the D-pad, press X to pull it out, and then I can ready it. There's just so many like little things that you kind of forget about, and you want to make sure that you do, because it can cost you your life or it can cost you some progress. But yeah, if you want to know, is it a thumbs up from me so far? If you liked Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, if you like an RPG that has a lot of systems going on, and if you want an immersive medieval sim game, yes, I will give it a thumbs up. If you want a quick-paced, right into the combat, no fluff, no if and no's or buts, everything is just kind of straightforward, no. This is not a straightforward game. This is not a quick and easy playthrough. This is not a babysit you all the way through. This is not a all objectives is marked on your map type game. This one makes you work for every tiny, minuscule piece of XP, every tiny bit of money, every blade, weapon, everything. You work so hard for it, which, makes progressing through the game very satisfying. But once again, if you're not looking for a longer RPG that is slow and plodding sometimes, but has a lot of good payoffs, like if you're not looking for this type of RPG that is very sim based, it's very like, here's the open world, go for it, then no, I would not recommend this one to you, because it is nowhere near like the quickness of the Final Fantasy games, or how, I'm going to bring it up again, Red Dead Redemption 2 kind of just like gets you into the game, gets you going, teaches you the basics, and then the full game starts and you kind of go. Like it's not quick and snappy with its combat. It's not quick and clean with its questing and stuff like that. It's very much like a slow like build up, a slow like, okay, I need to walk from one end of the map to the other end of the map, and there's going to be stuff in between, but it's going to be a long journey. And of course, you do get fast travel unlocked eventually, where when you get to a place, it brings up like a little blue shield that's like, hey, you can fast travel here if you want to. But it's not like a fade out, fade in. You're there. Your character walks the map very quickly. Obviously, it puts up the map and it just shows like a little icon for your character moving, but it actually is your character like speed running the map, like a Skyrim mod or something like that. And along the way, you'll still get those random encounters, and you can like press X to go get out of the quick mode and just like do the thing, or you can press O to try and bypass it. So it does have a bit of a fast travel system in there. So once you do start accumulating beds and going to various villages and stuff like that, towns, you will be able to quick move along the map quicker, but not like super quick still at the same time. There's also a pretty fun dice game worked into the game. They start you off pretty much in the first sequence with it, where you play dice, and it's kind of like Yahtzee almost, where you want to get multiples of a single number, or if you get like a 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like you get a point boost, and you kind of keep rolling until you bust, which means you didn't get a scoring dice number. So ones and fives score, and if you have multiples of the same number, obviously they score too. But if you let's say you roll your dice and you get 2 threes and a 1, you can only score the 1 because you need more than 2 threes. You can't save the threes. You can only save the 1. And of course, you can choose to just score your chips and move on at any time, but it's a bit of a game of chance. Right away, I gambled my first 10 coins at a dice game, and I lost horribly. So, maybe don't do that. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think I've talked enough about this for right now. I'm definitely not far enough into the game to be like super in depth with a review, but I think at this point I'm gonna keep playing it. We'll see where I'm at next week if I want to talk about it or not, and we'll go from there. Another game that I played this past week was Rift of the NecroDancer. I've been excited for this one for a while. This is a rhythm game, another rhythm game coming from the same studio who did Crypt of the NecroDancer, and they also did the Hyrule version of Crypt of the NecroDancer. It was all Legend of Zelda themed. This is a very different experience from those games. Essentially, it's like a Guitar Hero or Rock Band where the enemies come down the screen on a track, and you need to either use your controller or your keyboard to knock them out as they come along. And of course, you play the various songs written for the game. The songs are very upbeat and very fun. The difficulty levels range from easy to impossible, and I will tell you right now, as a person who's pretty decent at all things rhythm games, if you go straight to expert or impossible, it is what it is. They are like you really need to work your way up to that. I don't know if there's a single person who I know that could start with impossible and just kind of like ace it right away. But if you want to do trial by fire, that is completely up to you. Right now, I'm playing through the game on the medium difficulty. It seems to be the best one for just kind of learning the ropes and getting used to the game. And I'll probably bump it up to hard eventually. But right now, I tried playing on the hard difficulty. It was definitely more difficult than I was expecting. And then I switched to the medium difficulty just to make sure like I don't get too frustrated, and I just kind of have a bit of an easier way of learning all the things, because every enemy in the game does something different. A green slime needs to be hit once. A blue slime needs to be hit twice. A yellow slime needs to be hit 3 times. If there's skeletons as well who also have various different effects. Some of them will, the ones that need to be hit twice, sometimes they'll move to another spot, or like there's these bats that also like fly towards you, so you have to time it right with there's a lot going on in this game. Okay, I talked about there's a lot going on with Kingdom Come Deliverance. There's also a lot going on with Rift of the NecroDancer. It's all very quick and snappy as opposed to the slow, plodding along of Kingdom Come. Rift of the NecroDancer is very much in your face, like you better know what this enemy does, or else you're gonna lose some health here. And I found myself just stressing out over just the simplest of enemies, remembering I need to double hit this one because of a shield, or I need to watch the way that this one is pointing because I need to hit it on the other side of the screen or whatever. And it gets your blood going, blood pumping. It's definitely one of those games that it did not hold back, and it just kind of like it's bizarrely difficult for even someone like me who has played a fair amount of rhythm games in his past, good and bad. It also has some mini games laced throughout the campaign, which is what you saw in the trailers, where like you do some yoga or you do whatever, and it's all rhythm based as well. I don't know what I mean. There's also like if you buy it on Steam, there's also the whole Steam community. They actually built into the game like, hey, you can download any song from the Steam Workshop and just play it. And I don't know if they're going to be policing that, like, oh, there's a Blink-182 song, you can't have that on there because it's copyrighted. I don't know if they're going to do that, but so far they've added a couple of like these. There's people who are already like making tracks for these various songs. There's also a song editor in the game as well, so you can put your own MP3 into the game and chart out a course for it, which is pretty cool too. These are things that aren't really included with other rhythm games. They give you the power to just really to do your own thing, to make your own stuff. Along with the story mode, there's also a quick play mode and online modes and stuff like that. So there's plenty of content to keep you going. But once again, it's a workout. This game for your fingers. It's a workout for your fingers. Also, I would be careful if you're using a keyboard. I did start to feel a little bit of carpal tunnel in my wrists while playing the game because I wasn't really moving my hands too much, just my fingers, and I think that I caused it on myself. If you're using a keyboard, though, you can use either the WSAD or the arrow keys. So if one hand is feeling tired, you can switch even mid song. On the controller, it's not too bad because you're holding a controller, right? You can use either the D-pad or the face buttons. The only thing that's a bit awkward about the controller is when there's 3 enemies on the screen at a time, you need to press it down on the D-pad. Whereas if you're using the keyboard and WSAD, you can just press all 3 at the same time, which feels a bit more natural to me than pressing down on the D-pad. But it's a workaround for because you can't press like 3 ways on the D-pad at the same time. You can press the multiple buttons on the face buttons, but for the D-pad it would be a bit trickier because that really only goes one direction. Yeah, Rift of the NecroDancer, very fun so far. I am enjoying myself. I haven't played as much as I would like to as of right now because I have been prioritizing some other stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's still a fun game. It's got plenty of tracks. The story mode is pretty long, and it's got a bunch of other things to do in the game as well to keep you preoccupied. So yeah, Rift of the NecroDancer, that's definitely a thumbs up if you're a rhythm game lover. If you're not, it might be a bit tricky to get going, but maybe you'll like it in the end. You never know. It only takes one game. I say this all the time. It only takes one game in a certain genre to get you interested in that genre, and maybe Crypt or Rift of the NecroDancer is your ticket to that. I've also been playing a game called Fly Night, spelled FLY Night, and this is an interesting one. It's like a retro-inspired first-person RPG, kind of inspired by, of course, Souls games, but it's more so inspired by Kingsfield. And if you don't know what Kingsfield is, this is what From Software and Japan Studios were doing before, like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, etc. Kingsfield is a first-person, like medieval, fighting game, adventure game, whatever you want to call it, where you could have spells, you had various weapons and shields and stuff like that, and you kind of went through. It was a dungeon crawler, so you went through these long dungeons, and it was very much like what inspired them to make like Demon Souls and stuff like that, because you had these checkpoints every so often, but they were very long apart, and you had these enemies who were difficult to fight at times, and you had bosses, of course, to take out. And Fly Night takes that idea of Kingsfield and goes, okay, what if we modernize this a little bit? Put in some fishing and also put in some modern Souls elements, and that's just what they did. The game still looks like a PS1 or even early PC kind of game, with the character models being very blocky and the movements being very, very low frame rate, I guess is the right way to say it. Is like everything just is kind of like it's just animated in a way that they're like kind of like moving around on the screen in very jittery motions. That's the word I'm looking for. And that's kind of how the games were back in like the PS1 era, where the polygons just kind of like didn't look exactly right. So yeah, I mean, Fly Night it just kind of throws you right into it, almost like Kingdom Come Deliverance. You're ambushed at your campsite, and you're the only survivor. And you pick up some weapons and some armor from your fallen comrades, and then you take on your first enemy. And this is where the game gets very interesting, because there is a limb dismemberment mechanic in it. You can dismember any limb on a character, from their head to their toes to their arms. Well, not their toes, but their legs to their arms to their head. And that's essentially the way that they want you to beat the characters, is by focusing on one body part and just kind of wailing away at them. Of course, you have stamina management, but still, so you can attack their arm a couple times, break their armor, and then cut off their arm. Or same thing with their head. You can wail on their helmet, knock that off, cut their head off. Sometimes they'll still live after cutting their head off, so be careful. But it's one of those games that it's very focused on a mechanic where it's like tear off their limbs, almost like Dead Space, where it's like, okay, focus on those limbs. Don't worry so much about the body itself. Just focus on the limbs. Obviously, I've been going for the head most of the time, but hey, that's just me. Um, they also introduced the fishing mechanic very early on, where you can catch fish, which have various different properties to them. I believe you could also sell them to someone eventually in the game. But the fishing mechanic is pretty easy. It's pretty easy going. You cast your line out, you wait for the fish or whatever to bite, and then you reel it back in. Not too difficult. But the first dungeon in the game, which is like this plant-covered dungeon, is actually kind of difficult. There's these man-eater plants that are like the big Venus flytraps. There's plants that can shoot poison at you, poison missiles. There's those plants that hang from the ceilings with long tongues that can like tangle you up and start pulling you up. There's a lot going on top of like regular enemies being littered all throughout the map as well. Enemies with the quick enemies with 4 arms. There's also like these dung beetle type enemies who have big shields and they move kind of slow. And there's also other ones who roll up into a ball and they run at you or roll at you really fast and they start to fight you. And there was also like a samurai ant or whatever that used a katana, which was also a pretty scary like mini boss fight, I guess you could say. So, yeah, I mean, the game has everything that you kind of want from a Kingsfield experience while also modernizing a little bit, which is nice. There is a Fly Night prologue that you can play, which is a free version of the game. I think it gives you, like, the first area, which, it's a nice meaty chunk. The game's a bit longer than that, though, so, if you're in for it, you're in for the long run, because I think that the mechanics are solid in the game. It plays really well. Just like its predecessors, it can be a bit, I don't know, difficult at times, but it's not so difficult that I feel like I could never beat it. The first boss is pretty tough, and I am currently stuck on that right now, but that's not to say that it's impossible. That's just to say that I'm having trouble with that boss. So I'll probably update you on Fly Night eventually down the road. As of right now, it does get a thumbs up from me. I think it's a pretty cool idea. It's a pretty nice concept. It's a pretty nice reimagining of something that had come before, being Kingsfield. And, it has a pretty healthy player base right now. You can also team up with your friends in the game, too, so you don't even have to go alone. And they give you that option right away from the first bonfire. So you don't even need, like, special items or whatever to do that kind of stuff. So that is also very nice. Finally, for the games I've been playing this past week, Ropuka's Idle Island is the latest one that is the latest idling desktop game that I've kind of fallen in love with. Essentially, this little frog guy just kind of cuts grass on your desktop. He touches and cuts grass on your desktop. And I'm pulling him up right now so I can just kind of have him sitting there while I talk about it. But essentially, it's this little frog dude. He's on a floating island. And grass grows very fast on this island for some reason. But the grass, you can use the grass clippings to upgrade your character, buy things from the store, get random lottery tickets from the store, and also redecorate your island as well. And he just kind of does that. He does that over and over and over again, earning you money, which is the grass clippings they can spend on his stamina, on his how long he has to sleep to restore his stamina, how fast he cuts or how well he cuts, how much he cuts before he has to go back to sleep. There's also, like, you can improve the quality of the grass, so you get more money from grass, or it grows longer or faster or whatever. So yeah, it's a very chill game. It's not as I guess you don't really like Rusty's retirement from last year, which was number 10 on my top 10 list this in 2024. That gave you an experience of, like, I need to manage things here, I need to set things up correctly, I need to do whatever, but it can also just kind of play itself. Ropuka's Idle Island is a game that can just pretty much play itself. It doesn't really require any input by you. I mean, even if you don't upgrade anything on the character, he'll just kind of go and go and go, and you can just kind of earn money in the background. So it's a game where you actually don't need to touch it, and you can just kind of sit there and do its thing. And I don't think that this game is going to be anywhere near the top 10 list this year, but it is a very fun pixel art, like little game where, Ropuka just kind of does his thing. He cuts his grass. He sits back down and goes to sleep for a little while. He gets back up, and that's just the ease of life here. And there are options as well to like make it bigger or smaller. You can put a green screen behind it automatically in the game, which is nice too. If you're like a streamer and you want it on your stream. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in this game that I feel like is very charming. The background ambient noise and music is also very nice. I have that turned off, of course, because I don't really need that while I'm playing games. But I think that it's just a nice little idle adventure. Not much to say about it other than like, yeah, I like the vibes. And I like this little frog guy. And there's been a boom of idling games ever since Rusty Retirement got so much acclaim, not just from me, but also from the internet at large. And I think that's really great that it's inspired even more people to make their own little idle games that just kind of sit on your desktop and do their thing. Like there's one that came out recently as well that was like a Sims game that kind of had the character on idling on your screen. I didn't get that one, but I'm sure there's someone out there who maybe would enjoy that one. I think it's called My Little Life, if that makes if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, it's Ropuka's Island Adventure. It's like $5. It's chill. It's nice. That's all I can say. It's nice. So if you want to check that out, that is that. Okay, let's move on to what's in the news. Just as a reminder, if you want to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel or rate the podcast on Spotify, leave a comment or a review on Apple Podcasts, I would appreciate that. It does help the podcast grow. Okay, let's talk about some news. Rocksteady. It's rumored that they are going to be making a new single-player Batman experience. Wow, what a crazy idea for a video game. Am I right, folks? So after the failure of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and now that it's wrapped up its development cycle with its Season 5 being the ending season for the game, people are wondering, what is WB and Rocksteady doing next? And Jason Shearer, who is a reporter, looked into the matter, and he got back some information. No confirmed source right now, but WB is, quote-unquote, looking to return to Batman for a single-player game. Now, if they make another Batman Arkham game, I feel like that sweet spot right now is between Arkham Origins and Arkham Asylum. You have a nice, long gap there that's already been filled in a little bit by Arkham Shadows, or whatever it was called, on the VR for the Oculus. So if they can kind of just keep doing things in that space between those two games, I think that would be great. If they don't want to keep it as an Arkham series game, obviously they could always go with something different in terms of like a Batman game. It doesn't have to be Arkham per se, but I feel like the Arkham series is just such a big series at this point. It's beloved by a lot of people. It's crazy that they did not bring the series back for the new generation yet, and they decided to work on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I think obviously everyone knows that was just a big mistake. Even though I didn't mind the game at all, it definitely was not what anyone wanted from Rocksteady, who has been doing these incredible single-player Batman experiences. Batman Arkham Knight, Arkham City, and Arkham Asylum are three very, very good single-player experiences. And even though I don't like Origins, I think it's still a decent Batman experience, all things considered. But yeah, I mean, they definitely need to stray away from this live service stuff. A lot of companies are getting burned by it right now. We have Ubisoft, EA, etc., all kind of getting burned by live service games. And like I said before in a past podcast, you can hit with one, but if you try and redo that over and over and over again, it's not going to work out because people aren't going to be willing to play they're not going to be willing to play Apex Legends and whatever else you decide to put out. That happened with Sony. They put out Helldivers 2, great live service game. Then a couple months later, they tried to put out Concord and it failed. And it's because they're going into this market that like already is saturated as hell with their own game being Helldivers 2, and they're expecting people to just like be like, oh, time to play Concord. Yeah, didn't really work out. Anyway, back to the news at hand. After wrapping up development on Arkham Knight and its post-launch DLC, the Rocksteady, of course, went to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and $200 million was lost while making that game and bringing it to the market, which is crazy. The post-launch support wrapped recently with Season 5, with the big narrative twist that it was all clones of the heroes. Not really a big twist at all. And as of right now, Rocksteady and WB as a whole, they're going to be starting progress on a new Batman game. And then also they are working on, Avalanche Studios is working on the sequel to Hogwarts Legacy. So there you go. Also, he reported that the Wonder Woman title is in development at Monolith still, but it faced a lot of issues. It is still years, with an S, years away from release at this point, even though they originally announced it in December of 2021. Essentially, the project had to be restarted early last year, and it's already cost more than $100 million to make. So you're restarting the game, and it was $100 million already in the tank for it. Now you have to restart the entire thing. That's kind of crazy. They were going to put the Nemesis system into the game, which is copyrighted by WB and Monolith, which is crazy that no one else can use the system because there's so many games that could use the system. But anyway, according to Jason Shearer, an initial version of Wonder Woman tried reimagining the Nemesis system in the game's namesake heroine befriending enemies, but the idea has been since tossed out in favor of a more traditional action-adventure game. So I'm guessing they've completely tossed out the idea of a Nemesis system, or they're reworking it to be more like Shadow of Mordor. I guess we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, Monolith Productions was working on Wonder Woman for 3 years. They were experimenting with procedural storytelling. They were particularly interested in creating new characters and a universe from scratch. So instead of making a game based off of a fresh IP, they decided to use the Wonder Woman game for that. But apparently, it wasn't really working out, and they've had to restart the game in total. So pretty crazy stuff. Haven't seen anything about the game, so you can't really comment on anything. I think they got the design for Wonder Woman down, at least from the teaser trailer, but that's about it. As for like if they should put the Nemesis system in there, it depends on what kind of Wonder Woman game we're getting. Like if she's going to be fighting battles, like let's say that the island nation that she inhabits is under attack, I think the Nemesis system would work pretty well. But if she's just in the streets of like a city and you're fighting like mobsters or something, I don't know. Or if they're making it more like the Wonder Woman movie where she's in like World War I or something like that. I don't know. It's hard to say anything or comment about anything because we just don't know. And now that the game is being reworked and restarted, it's hard to say and maybe what I said was right, but now after they've rebooted the game, it might be wrong now. It's just one of those things that's like I would rather just like not comment on it and just kind of move on, because no matter what I say here, it's either going to change in the future or it's going to be something completely different and I'll just be wrong. And I would rather not be wrong. I would rather just kind of see what's going to happen and comment on that, Next up, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater had its release date leaked on the PlayStation Store. The PlayStation Store is currently, it's been down all day on Saturday and people are starting to get worried. Some services are coming back online, though, so it's not too bad. Krispy Kreme Donuts, as posted by Greedy Waffles in the Discord, was giving away donuts between 5 and 7 p.m. on Saturday because the PSN store was down. So, pretty funny there. But yes, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater had its release date leaked online. So if you don't want to know what the release date is before they officially reveal it, skip ahead to the next chapter. But if you do want to know, it's coming out on August 28th, 2025. I'm sure we'll be getting some sort of reveal or another trailer soon to confirm that. But the PlayStation Store did have the release date listed on it for quite some time before it was changed. And I think that that's a decent release time, or at least release day for the game, late August. I don't see any reason to not like that. And maybe they'll show that off at the next State of Play. That's possible, because I think they originally revealed it as State of Play, right? They did the zoom in on Snake in like a swamp, which is where most of the game takes place. But yeah, there you go. If you want to try, if you want to wishlist that on PlayStation or anywhere else, I believe you can now. You still can't pre-order it because they haven't revealed the release date fully, but it does have a it does say PS5 Pro Enhanced, so maybe that also was a leak too. But anyway, August 28th is apparently the day that Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater is coming out. Speaking of Capcom, they decided to pull the plug on Resident Evil Reverse, which was a celebration of the game or the series' 25th anniversary, pulling in characters from various different Resident Evil games like Nemesis and the guy from what's his name, the dad from Resident Evil 7. There was also a couple other characters as well in there, like Leon and Ashley and Agent 9 or whatever his name was. I love that name from the remake of Resident Evil 2. He was like an agent from the mini game from it. Anyway, on the 3rd of March, it'll be delisted from digital storefronts, and it will officially end all services on June 29th. In a statement, they said Resident Evil Reverse was developed in celebration of the 25th anniversary of the Resident Evil series, and your overwhelming support for the game has far exceeded our expectations since its release. Now that we've reached a new turning point for the series, we feel that Resident Evil Reverse has served its original celebratory purposes admirably. We are incredibly grateful for your warm support for Resident Evil Reverse, and we deeply apologize for bringing you this disappointing news. I just want to say that Resident Evil Reverse was not good. It was not a good multiplayer Resident Evil type experience. It had some interesting ideas in there, as most multiplayer games do, but it just wasn't enough to keep my attention and other people's attention. There's a lot of people who enjoy this game, I'm sure, but I don't think that anyone was like praising Resident Evil Reverse. It was delayed significantly after the release of Resident Evil Village, which was supposed to be released on the same day of. It really hasn't received any updates in the past, 2 years or whatever, how long it's been. Like, there's really not much going on with it. And the real kicker is that it's a 1.0 on Metacritic. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about this. I don't think it has a very large player base, and the people who are playing it probably won't really care that it's being taken offline. Maybe. I don't know. If you like Resident Evil Reverse, let me know in the comments below. This was not a surprise to anyone, especially me, because I don't think I've thought of Resident Evil Reverse since it came out. And even then, I didn't think about it much because I only played a couple rounds of it, and then I went, okay, well, that was dumb, and moved on. The next Battlefield game will officially be coming out sometime before April 2026. EA even showed some something called Battlefield Labs. There's a video for it that they showed off where it was a bit of a tease for what they're going for. Obviously, they showed off some pre-alpha footage, but I think that the footage that they showed off looked really, really good. The graphics looked great. Everything about it looked very good, and I'm excited to see what they're doing with this new version of Battlefield. They've already confirmed that Battlefield Portal will be back, so you'll be able to have experiences from the other games in the series. It's kind of like a emulate, not really emulated, but you can kind of make your own custom matches. Like you could put like the Battlefield 1945 weaponry and map, and then you could also have like it was Battlefield Portal. You know what it is. It was like kind of fun a little bit. Anyway, the game is looking good. I'm looking forward to more gameplay for it. I think they'll be showing off a much larger presentation at maybe the Summer Games Fest. That's where I think they are going to show it. The other thing too is that they have 4 major studios under EA's wings working on the game as well: DICE, Motion, Criterion, and Ripple Effect. Criterion has worked on the Need for Speed series, and even though they say that the Need for Speed series is not dead, they are now working on the Battlefield. Also in the news today, Football Manager 25 has been canceled, but they're just moving over their work to Football Manager 26 instead. So Football Manager 25 was supposed to be released last year. It was supposed to come to Xbox Game Pass as well, and it got hit with some delays at the end of the year, so it got moved to March 2025. But now the game is officially canceled, and they're going to be focusing on releasing Football Manager 26 in this November instead. In a statement, they said, due to a variety of challenges that we've been open about, and many more unforeseen challenges, we currently haven't achieved what we set out to do in enough areas of the game, despite the phenomenal efforts of our team. Each decision to delay the release was made with the aim of getting the game closer to that desired level, but as we approached the critical milestone at the turn of the year, it became unmistakably clear that we would not achieve our standards and it required an adjusted timeline. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my brain right now. I'm gonna lock in for this next paragraph. We could have pressed on, released Football Manager 25 in its current state, and fixed the things down the line, but that's not the right thing to do. We were so unwilling to go beyond a March release, as it would be too late in the football season to expect players to then buy another game later in the year. So I think that that's a pretty sound reasoning. Many sports only are available, or maybe not available, but they're kind of played during specific times of the year, like between like fall and spring, it's football time. Between winter and summer, it's NHL time. Between like all the summer months, it's soccer and baseball, right? And right now, like between spring and fall, it's NBA time. So these games do need to come out at a certain time to make the most money that they can. And I do like the idea that, like, hey, they didn't want to release a broken game and keep updating it. Instead, they're going to focus on putting out a good Football Manager game at the end of the year. And I'm sure, I believe it's still coming to Xbox Game Pass. It's just going to be 26 instead of 25. So there you go. And finally, for the news today, Grand Theft Auto 5 has officially sold 210 million copies. And the reason why I'm talking about this is that in the last 3 months of 2024, it sold 5 million copies alone. How? That's my question. How does it sell 5 million copies again? Like in 3 months? It's maybe because of Christmas and kids asked for it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it went on a huge sale. I never bought the next gen version of the game, so I might actually pick up like a PS5 version of Grand Theft Auto 5, because right now I only have a PS3 version of it. But that's the thing, right? It's like, how does this game sell 5 million more copies in the last 3 months? That is absolutely absurd. And that just goes to show, like, Rockstar doesn't really need to make another Grand Theft Auto game. This one is still making tons of money, and they've re-released it on 3 console generations, and it's still making just as much money as a release from this year would. It's absolutely insane. And that's not all, though. Red Dead Redemption 2 has also sold 70 million copies as of this fiscal year. 3 million of those units were from the last quarter, so probably last like 5 or 6 months. Still a very nice, like, it sold a lot of games. So it's just one of those things where it's like Rockstar, they put out 2 fantastic games in the past with Red Dead 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5. Obviously, they have other games as well, but if you look at their timeline of game releases, it's been GTA 5, Red Dead 2, GTA 5 on PS4, Red Dead 2 Online mode, GTA Online mode stuff littered throughout the entire year, GTA 5 PS5 version releases, and Xbox Series X version, and that's it. So even though they're making all this money, they're not outputting the same amount of games that they would even in the past. Even back when Red Dead 1 and Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, and Max Payne 3, like, you were still starting to see a slowdown of their production, and now it's like it's slammed to a halt. And it's probably because they've been working so hard on GTA 6. It's another one of those things where it's like, I wish that they could just make a smaller game, kind of like with Sony, how it's like, I wish that they would make like a smaller Sly Cooper game so that they could keep the IP alive while also working on the big blockbuster AAA. Same thing for Rockstar. It's like, well, you could be working on like a smaller game, maybe like a from your repertoire of IPs. But no, they're just working on GTA 6, and they might be working on another Red Dead or something else in the background. We don't know, but GTA 6 feels like it's going to be the big one for them, and that might last another 5 or 6 years as well, maybe even 3 console generations again. Who knows? They did say they're going to confirm that the fall release is set in stone right now. They feel really good about that coming out in 2025, in fall of 2025. So we'll see if they narrow it down anytime soon. But as of right now, 210 million copies of the game sold. I mean, that's right up there with your other high selling games like Minecraft and your World of Warcrafts and stuff like that. So pretty crazy indeed. All right, let's move on to what's coming soon. First thing, MLB The Show 25 is coming back. Who could have guessed? So this is coming out on the 18th of March. It will not be coming to Xbox Game Pass this year, but it is coming to all the major consoles, PlayStation, Epic Store, I think, Switch, and Xbox. So you will be able to get it on every platform still. Obviously, this is just an improved version from 2024. It still includes all things from 2024. Or I'm sorry, 24 NFL. I'm not NFL. This show 2024. It includes all those things plus some new things coming around. So, the biggest thing is that you will be able to play the Road to the Show mode, which will start you all the way back in high school, and then you will actually be able to go to the college leagues before you get to the minor leagues. So it'll be an authentic high school and college. I guess they said authentic high school and college audio. Which will include clink of metal bats and the rattle of chain link fences. Ooh. Also, they improved the Diamond Dynasty mode with a new board game-like mode called Diamond Quest. And there will also be a competitive multiplayer mode called Weekend Classic. They are also bringing in the... I don't want to say the word. The leagues. Which was actually a big selling point for 2023 and 2024. There was actually a whole leagues version of like a collector's edition. And this time they have Bob Kendrick, who is going to be the anchor for that mode. There will also be some new difficulty settings, including an ambush hitting system, which will allow you to be more offensive from the very first pitch. They're going to be really revealing more about the game up until the release. There will be a deep dive on February 11th if you want to check that out. There's also a new trailer on PlayStation's YouTube channel. A game called Cloudheim is coming out this year as well in 2025. People are saying it has some Breath of the Wild-esque atmosphere or whatever you want to call it. I think it kind of looks more like that Phoenix Rising game, honestly. But the enemies designs, like they're the basic enemies kind of do look like a green version of like a bokoblin or something like that. But the main gist of the game is adventuring around, opening up chests, building your forts, improving your weapons with the blacksmith and stuff like that. And there's also co-op stuff as well in the game too, so you can play with other people. There's also a robust magic system, etc., etc., crafting, survival, etc., etc., 4-player online co-op, etc., etc. Enemies will take more damage if you use the physics in the game to attack them, which means the destructible environment around you will be to your benefit. Weapons can also be improved to have tornado-like effects or explosions or freezing effects. There is a giant turtle, which will be your hub area where you can craft a range of weaponry and improve your progress. So yeah, if you want to check that out, there is a trailer on IGN's YouTube channel. Onimusha 2 Remaster has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Steam. Yes, you heard me right. For the older generation, it will be playable with PS5 and Xbox backwards compatibility, but they are not doing a native version for the newest consoles. This was revealed during the Capcom event, where they also talked about a couple of games that were coming up, but I felt like it didn't really, it wasn't anything new. But this was the new thing. Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny. This game originally came out in the PS2 era, and it introduced a new protagonist, expanded on the original game's gameplay with extra mechanics and features. And in this new version, they've done they've redone the graphics. They made the graphics look much better, but they kept the core game intact, focusing on better visuals but keeping the mechanics the same. So if you like the original game back in the day, you're probably going to really enjoy this remaster of the game. I would probably call this a remake personally, but it always blurs the line somehow. Atari is coming out with a new game. Well, a new version of an old classic. Breakout Beyond, the classic brick breaking game, is back, and this time better than ever. Being made by the same studio that did the Bit Trip Runner series, Choice Provisions. This is a new spin on the classic by giving you combos, multiple balls, multiple balls everywhere. Different abilities as well, and power-ups to break out of your barriers and to break into the blocks. It's not all about clearing every single block from the stage. Sometimes you have a goal of getting a combo of a certain type or whatever. As your combo grows, the effects and the music will grow wilder, and the special power-ups which will be discovered to give you even crazier sights and sounds. There will be 72 levels in the base game, a 2-player co-op mode, and an endless mode for anyone looking to test their skills. This looks really good so far. I think that this will definitely be added to like a list of games that I want to play this year. It's going to be coming to everything: Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, etc. So if you want to check that out, Breakout Beyond, coming soon. Also coming soon to Nintendo Switch is the next Game Boy Advance game for the Nintendo Online Library, and that is Wario Land 4. Wario Land 4 joins the roster of Game Boy Advance games next to its other game in the series, Wario Land 3. Wario Land 4 is the one that more people remember. It has this one has the more like recognizable pixel artwork and stuff like that. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with Wario Land 3, but there's just something about Wario Land 4 that just looks a bit better. I remember it playing a bit better when I was a kid than anything else that I played on the Game Boy Advance, and it's just one of those games that I was really hoping was going to come back, and here it is. I would still love to see the other Wario Land games come around, but what are you going to do? Wario Land 4 is coming to Nintendo Switch Online and the expansion pack on February 14th. So instead of hanging out with your loved ones on Valentine's Day, you can play Wario Land. Loot Looney Wario has discovered his biggest score yet. It's a fabulous golden pyramid filled with riches. The trouble is, its denizens don't want to give up the treasure easily, but that hasn't stopped Wario before. In Wario Land 4, the greedy hero finds himself no longer invincible, as in his previous platform adventures. He can, however, undergo amazing transformations that aid him in his quest, like becoming a vampire bat, bouncy Wario, and even a zombie. So if you want to check that out, like I said, February 14th is the day for that one to come to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass. Here are some games coming to Xbox Game Pass between now and the 18th. Right now, you can download Another Crab's Treasure and Euden Chronicles 100 Heroes on the standard tier of Xbox Game Pass. Also, Starfield as well came to the standard tier on the console version. February 6th, which has already passed, you can now play Madden 25 with EA Play on the Ultimate version of Game Pass on PC or on console. And then February 13th is Kingdom 2 Crowns. This is coming to the Ultimate and Standard version of the Xbox Game Pass on console and cloud only. And finally, Avowed is coming out February 18th, which is coming to the Series X and S, PC and cloud, Ultimate tier, and PC version of Xbox Game Pass, if you want to check any of those games out. Here are some games that are leaving the Game Pass in February of 2025. So all these games are leaving on the 15th, so you have a little bit more time to check them out before they go. A little to the left, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, EA Sports UFC 3, Indivisible, Merge and Blade, Return to Grace, and Tales of Arise. Those are all the games that are going to be leaving. The only one that I really know about is A Little to the Left, which is like a chill, cozy game of organizing things. Callus recently played Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Let's pull up his review for it, because that'll be better than me just going like, oh, it's a Metroidvania. It seemed to be a good game. But here we are. Callus says, it's a great Metroid-like, has pretty big castle to explore with lots of secrets and things to do once you have more abilities, if you so choose to. Lots of extra stuff like cooking and crafting that was kind of an annoyance since it was so hard to come by materials, but luckily it's not essential. In true Castlevania style, some tough bosses, and plenty of variety with weapons and abilities. Breakable your walls! And he gave it a 4 out of 5. So if you want to check it out, there you go. All right, folks, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Very much do appreciate you. If you want to check me out anywhere else, it's all at Yemmy the Ferret, whether it be on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, etc. We stream on Twitch Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. Right now, we're switching between Red Dead 2 and Pokemon Sword. I think we're getting pretty close to the end of Red Dead 2. Pokemon Sword, kind of the same thing. I know we still have a bit more to go, but kind of the same thing. We're kind of getting to the end of that one as well. So hopefully we'll get those finished by the end of the month here. Also, if you want to check me out on the other podcast I do with my friends, it's called Film Freaks with a Z. We recently reviewed the movie The Mummy from 1999, the original one. Well, not the original, but the one that everyone remembers. So that one, that podcast episode is up now. Those release every 2 weeks. And if you don't mind checking out the Yemmy the Ferret VODs channel if you want to, that has all my past streams archived there on YouTube. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the final part of the show, which is What's That Song? If you know the name of the song and the game that it came from, either comment down below on the YouTube video or in the Ferret64 section on my Discord, link down in the description below, with the name of the song and the game that came from. And if you get it right, I'll give you a super reaction in the Discord, and you'll get the admiration of your peers. Or on YouTube, I'll give you a heart and a congratulations in the comments. You can also comment on Spotify as well, if you so desire. All right, folks, thank you so much once again. I am Yemmy the Ferret, and this has been another episode of Ferret64. I'll see you next week. So long.
The Ferret64 podcast is owned and edited by Yemmy the Ferret. Small sound clips used throughout the podcast were made by Yemmy the Ferret. The song in the intro and outro is Nightshade by Adhesive Wombat. The Ferret64 logo was made by Player2P2. News sources include PushSquare.com, NintendoLife.com, and PureXbox.com. All opinions, video game related, are my own. Thank you for listening.